You showed up at a destination you have visited before, and this time there is a gate, a screen, a fee you never paid on your last trip, and the line behind you is already long. This is happening at some of the world's most visited places right now, and most people misunderstand why. It is not simply about money. The real reason is quieter, more structural, and it is starting to reshape where people choose to go. Here are 4 destinations where entry fees are changing the experience, and what the headlines keep getting wrong about each one. Number 1. Venice. Venice introduced a day tripper entry fee for peak season weekends, targeting visitors who arrive, photograph the canals, and leave the same day without spending the night. Reports from early 2025 suggest the fee applies on selected high-traffic days, and the amount is modest by most standards. But that is exactly the point most visitors miss. The fee is not designed to generate significant revenue. Venice's resident population has been declining for decades. The pressure on narrow streets, water taxis, and local infrastructure during peak hours has made daily life genuinely difficult for the people who actually live there. The fee is an attempt to flatten the daily crowd curve, not to fill a budget gap. What most people get wrong: they assume paying the fee means the problem is solved. It does not. Researchers studying Venice's crowd patterns note that a small fee tends to filter out the most price-sensitive visitors while leaving the overall volume largely intact during the busiest periods. The harder question, whether the destination can remain livable at all, is still unanswered. Next up, Amsterdam, where the approach is different and the misunderstanding runs deeper. Number 2. Amsterdam. Amsterdam has been expanding its tourist tax framework, and as of recent reporting, it charges one of the higher overnight visitor levies among European capitals. The city has also been actively discouraging certain types of tourism through zoning, advertising restrictions, and limits on short-term rentals. Here is what most visitors misunderstand. The tourist tax is not the main tool. It is the visible surface of a much larger policy shift. Amsterdam's government has stated openly that it wants to attract visitors who engage with the city's culture, museums, and neighborhoods, and reduce the concentration of visitors who cluster in a few streets near the central station. The fee alone does not move behavior much. The combination of fees, reduced party tourism advertising, and stricter Airbnb limits is what is quietly restructuring who comes, where they stay, and how long they linger. That is a more deliberate redesign of the visitor experience than most people realize when they simply pay the tax at checkout. Number 3. Bali. Bali introduced a visitor levy that applies to international tourists, with the stated purpose of funding environmental and cultural preservation. The amount, as reported by Indonesian authorities, is relatively low, but the reasoning behind it carries a signal that is easy to miss. Bali's levy is partly symbolic. It is meant to establish the principle that entering a place with significant cultural and ecological value carries a cost and a responsibility. Local advocates have pointed out that the infrastructure damage from high visitor volumes to rice terraces, temple sites, and coastal areas has been accumulating for years faster than restoration funding can address it. What most people get wrong here: they treat it as a transaction. Pay the fee, the obligation ends. But the levy is designed to fund ongoing stewardship, and the gap between what the fee collects and what preservation actually costs remains wide. The fee is a beginning, not a solution. Number 4. An emerging case worth watching. Several destinations that have not yet introduced formal entry fees are actively studying the models above. Reports from 2024 and early 2025 suggest that places including parts of coastal Croatia, certain Greek island municipalities, and areas within over-tourism-affected regions of Southeast Asia are in various stages of designing visitor management systems, some fee-based, some quota-based, some combining both. The pattern is consistent. Resident quality of life pressure reaches a threshold, local governments respond with a visible mechanism, and visitors interpret it as a pricing decision when it is actually a capacity decision. Here is the larger question this raises. If fees alone do not reduce volume at the most popular spots, and if the destinations that are genuinely restructuring are using fees as one layer of a broader system, then the real effect may not be fewer visitors at the famous places. It may be a gradual shift in which destinations become worth the friction and which ones quietly become easier to visit precisely because they are less overwhelmed. That shift is already showing up in how some experienced visitors are planning trips. Not toward the cheapest option, and not toward the most famous name, but toward places where the experience still feels proportionate to the effort. If you want to understand where that shift is pointing, which destinations are gaining attention specifically because the overcrowded ones are getting harder, that is exactly what we are looking at next.